making a comment I think that's probably everybody can relate to, and that is there's an imperative to understand that all this effort and all this time and all the resources that we are putting into social development is actually paying off. And that the social impact that we gain, it justifies the reason for a non-profit or social enterprise's existence. If we're not measuring our impact, then what are we doing playing in this space? In South Africa, specifically, we've got over 280,000 registered nonprofits, which is a hang of a lot of nonprofit organizations. We also have an environment where there is limited theories of change, there's limited evidence of social impact creation, not a lot of collaboration and partnerships, although that's been getting a lot better, a lot of ingrained isolation due to the sector silos that we see in South Africa and funding paradigms. And we've got this huge welfare system that just grinds on and on and on, which then encourages this environment in our society of dependence that leads to entitlement. And so this landscape of poverty, very high inequality and unemployment continues. People have high trauma because of apartheid, low self-esteem, with broken, dysfunctional families, and they're generally stuck in dependency. I want to just go through 5 just quick key points that form the foundation behind why we utilize the metrics and why we do things in the Greenlight movement the way we do. And the first thing is, we don't see people generally as the main actors in eliminating poverty from their own lives. Generally, organizations do things to people, on behalf of people, very seldom with people. And so we don't see organizations engaging with individuals and households in a form of self-diagnosis that allows them to participate in their own self-development and what I call their own self-measurement. And as a result, it's all the top-down implementation of programs, and we implement what we think people need. Another main issue is that often impact assessments and evaluations are notoriously one-sided. They're seen through the eyes of the assessor, from top down, and not from bottom up, and don't include the very people who we're serving, their opinions. And thirdly, the aim of an assessment is often to be objective, which sounds good, objective and neutral, especially about the findings. But what it doesn't consider is that people have a perceived reality, and their realities are hugely subjective and 100% valid. So we've got to take people's own perceived perspectives and realities into account, because that tells us often why they are behaving the way they are. The fourth point I wanted to make is that outcomes and impacts for most programs are measured using income generation or household costs as the main indicators. And we know that there's very little effort to use M&E tools beyond that traditional money metric method. Leading on from that, most assessment records show or results from a form of quantitative data or qualitative data, but seldom both. And if you bring the two together, you get this magnificent blend of insights. Now, with that in mind, today's session is about the following. What is the Greenlight approach and how does it work? How is data analyzed and reported? And to provide you with a brief overview of one of our surveys called the Poverty Survey. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about facilitators doing the work in the field, the Greenlight app and its platform, which so you need great technology to back this, and then the collaboration of all the Greenlight members who are using these metrics and how they come together and they form a Greenlight movement. And then lastly, just a couple of insights and findings to just whet your appetite. So as we go through, if you've got a burning question, I can't see your faces. Won't you stop and ask that question? But if you'd like, if it's quite a complicated question, we may just ask you to hold it to the end where we are going to have a conversation and you can ask as many questions as you want. So what is the Greenlight approach and how does it work? I first need to honor where this approach came from. And it was developed in Brazil by Dr. Vera Cordeira and her team in South França, now known as the DARA Institute. And they developed something called the Family Action Plan. It was then picked up by Martin Burt, a social entrepreneur in Paraguay, and his team at Fundación Paraguaya. And they innovated it into what we call the stoplight approach. And that's been experiencing success in Paraguay since 2009. And it has spread out a little bit to the international world. It was picked up by my friend and colleague Tracy Chambers from the clothing bank, now known as Taking Care of Business, in 2014, I think actually in 2030, but it was localized, customized, and developed by her team and myself for the South African context. And it's now called the Greenlight Approach. So what is it? It is an approach that is multidimensional in nature. It looks at multidimensional poverty and someone's quality of life and their family's quality of life. And specifically, we look at beneficiaries, the people that we work with, the people that we serve, as well as employees who might belong in a corporate or a business space. It allows households that are struggling with socioeconomic issues to self-diagnose their issues. Why? Because it becomes the first step in activating them and helping them to think about developing a personalized strategy to reach for that better quality of life. It allows a family to say, hey, what does it mean to be poor versus not poor? Understand the difference and then take action to assist themselves to address that difference. So the poverty survey is just one version of the Greenlight metrics that we have. We've got a number of other versions, such as disability, resilience, teacher well-being, and we're creating more versions according to the Greenlight framework. But today, I'm only going to talk to you about the poverty survey. In the poverty survey, we've got 6 sections, 6 dimensions, and they contain really important statements about our lives. So we've got a section around income and employment, health and environment, housing and infrastructure, education and culture, organization participation, self-awareness and motivation. And that one, by the way, self-awareness and motivation, is, I think, and remains to us at the Greenlight office, the most important of all of those. It's not number 1, income and employment, it's actually self-awareness and motivation. And I'll come to that just now. Within the 6 sections of this metric, we have spread out 50 indicators, where these 50 indicators, each one has 3 definitions or 3 scenarios. A scenario that is red, where it describes a situation where somebody is stuck for an indicator. A scenario that is yellow, where somebody or a family might be trying but struggling. And then a scenario that is green, where that family might recognize that they are doing well, they've got confidence with that indicator, and there's dignity and independence around that particular theme. And typically, that's what it looks like. This is number 2, stable employment and income sources. And you can see that there's a definition and a little image in the green section, and in the yellow, and so too in the red. And we find that people absolutely love the stoplight colors. It resonates with them, they relate to them, they understand what those colors mean. We always have to make sure that before they start the survey, they understand the one extra factor, and that red is not bad and green is not good. Red means I am stuck. Green means I'm doing well and I have dignity and confidence indicator. So this is not about us judging them on how they're doing. It's about them self-diagnosing which one of these scenarios most reflects their family situation at this moment in time. And every one of our indicators that we have in our surveys relates back to an SDG. I often get asked, what is the ultimate end game that you see at the Greenlight office? And that is, can we help every single family in this country, in South Africa, and hopefully moving into Africa, to cross a line where they feel they have independence and dignity? That's the end game, helping others to help themselves cross that line. So how does it work? Surveys can be conducted in the home or at a place of work. We have facilitators who are trained up in the Greenlight Approach, and their job is to hold space, a safe space for families or employees to share the sensitive information. And they should ensure that beneficiaries are prepared to answer all the questions as honestly as possible, to ensure that there's no right, wrong answers here in terms of what the families think, so that they don't just tell you what you want to hear. The families need to be as honest as they can, telling you exactly what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And they're assured that every family is different, and so every Greenlight scorecard will be different. The facilitators bring back both quantitative data in the form of the survey and qualitative data, which is basically the story about what's happening in the household at the time of that survey. The end result, after a facilitator sits with the family for about 45 minutes to an hour, is that there's a scorecard that is produced on an app on the tablet. And that scorecard is then translated into a scorecard that stays with the family, because information is power. And they need to see that information and remind themselves and to encourage further conversations in the family about where they're red, yellow, and green. And it really helps them to reflect and prioritize and start planning how to resolve some of those socioeconomic problems that's affecting their family. They're always very excited to see what the results are. And we can sum up the results in terms of a score. For example, 21 greens out of 50, 16 yellows, and 13 reds. And typically, the kind of verbal response we get is, oh, I'm not as poor as I thought I was. I was not aware of how much I'm responsible for what's happening in my life. And the one that just gets our blood singing, I can change this. I'm going to go a little bit more into reporting just now. What I want to say is that once the families have their scorecards back, we find that those organizations who then put those scorecards to work bring those beneficiaries back, or the representatives of the beneficiaries, into a room, sit them around a table and say, hey, here's a blank action plan. You've got your scorecards. I want you to write down, where are you red and orange the most that worries you? The ones that you feel are critical for change, write them down. Okay, now out of all of those, put down your top 5 or 10 that you think you can start working on this year. And once they've done that, they open up a discussion about what are some of the things that they can do to help themselves to start moving some of the reds and the yellows to green. Sure, the organization themselves have a mandate to work on some of those indicators with the beneficiaries, but that doesn't stop the beneficiaries and their families from working on the other indicators by themselves. And so having these wonderful group sessions where they can realize, oh, I don't need to feel embarrassed or ashamed about my situation. Look, Bonani also feels the same way. Miriam feels the same way. So does Rose. We can have these open discussions and we can get ideas from each other, which then also creates more social cohesion, inclusion, and builds social networks. So ultimately, this methodology provides a snapshot in time of a family's socioeconomic status. And it breaks the concept of poverty, which can be hugely overwhelming, down into bite-sized chunks so they can deal with it. It helps them to contrast what does it mean to be stuck or struggling versus doing well. And it provides a direct line of sight to that quality of life. The green definitions describe what it means to be doing well. So a lot of light bulbs go off during the survey process. And we have many families that break down crying because they've been asked questions they've never been asked before, and they're starting to understand, how did I get here? How much am I responsible for what's partly happening in my life? And leading on to promoting ownership and responsibility for action out of poverty. And people starting to realize that they need to adopt certain behaviors and attitudes in order to overcome poverty in all its dimensions and to maintain a standard of living that is no longer poor. Ultimately, we want to encourage self-reflection in this journey of peoples away from impoverishments and dependence to a life of independence and dignity. So if you think about it kind of like a cycle where we help people and families through organizations to define their poverty, self-diagnose, plan for change, experience transformation year in, year out, and then to start mapping the impact so that we can get a bigger picture of what's happening. Now, at this point, I want to show you a video, if I may. Can I just ask the admin person to make sure that I can play sound? So I'm going to see if I can play sound as well. Give me a second. Just going to minimize that, go back into that down, that. All right, I'm hoping that you're going to hear my sound. I can't set sound. Only you can set sound from your side. So tell me, please, if you can hear the sound. Could you hear the sound?
I can't on my side.
We can't see any sound.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Give me a second. I'm going to stop sharing again, and I'm going to reshare and see if I can make the sharing of sound from my side, because I'm not the host here. So let's go in. Let's share screen again. Share sound at the bottom. Go in. Let's hope this works.
In a world where
Yes,
poverty is
got
still
it.
a pervasive issue, two things have become clear. We need to put people at the center of their own development, and we need to explore creative and collaborative ways of working together to optimize impact. Social development is neither rational nor linear, so we have to find smart, innovative ways of listening and learning from the people we serve in our society. And if we work together, then we stand a chance of finding the sweet spot of maximum social impact. Greenlight is a social methodology and a set of metrics that activates people's awareness, encourages their agency, and motivates them to own their journeys to a better quality of life. Together with a well-thought-out technology platform, Greenlight helps organizations to listen to people in ways that were unimaginable before and to evidence their social impact. There are over 130 organizations based in South Africa and the Sub-Saharan Africa who are using the Greenlight approach to activate people and to assess the impact of their developmental programs. This is the Greenlight movement, and it has been in existence since 2015. We follow a people-first philosophy, and because we all use the same impact framework, we come together in forums, webinars, and conferences to have critical conversations about what is working and what is not. And our end game is helping people to help themselves from impoverishment and dependency to independence and dignity. It's the job of the Greenlight Office to support the Greenlight movement in their efforts to measure, understand, evidence, and articulate their social impact. With metrics that measure multidimensional poverty, resilience in entrepreneurs and the self-employed, as well as the interwovenness of disability with poverty, the Greenlight Office has over 40,000 assessments in the system, many of them forming longitudinal snapshots in time. And the outcome is a hub of credible, integrous data that exists in both granular and aggregated forms. And due to the capture of both quantitative and qualitative data, Greenlight members are able to use insight for better decision-making and evaluation of their programs. The result of combined data, stories, and case studies is that the Greenlight Office has the knowledge to leverage discussions on a societal and policy level. And then there are the Greenlight facilitators, a vital part of the movement. They hold space for people to self-diagnose their situations and to tell their stories, never judging and never giving advice. They are the magic in the Greenlight process. These facilitators bear witness to the changes that people make in their lives. They bring back the data and the stories so that we can enhance our understanding and respond more appropriately with our programs. By bringing together a diverse range of organizations in the Greenlight movement, a sharing and supportive environment is created that allows organizations to see each other as collaborators and not competitors. Using the Greenlight data, we are identifying interesting trends and insights from various stages of programs, from baselines to 12 months, 24 months, and 36 months and further. We can now provide input on the main challenges to families across South Africa, what people change first when starting to earn income, what seems to be important to change first, what stays red, in other words stuck, and is hard to change, what people really need versus what they want, and then program design, what's working and what's not. Although many organizations currently have reasonable reporting and governance practices in place, we believe there is a need to go further, to look in the mirror and fully comprehend the impact we are making, to be agile and willing to redesign programs for greater impact. We need government agencies and the CSI sector to step up and support programs for 3 years and longer to ensure effective measurement and evidence of real impact. We need partners who have special products and knowledge to join the Greenlight ecosystem to enhance the reach of the Greenlight movement. Are you conscious of the challenges you face in finding better ways of helping people to help themselves? Connected to your communities and to the social economy? Courageous in your efforts to use data that can lead to real solutions that bring about lasting impact and change? We are, and it's moving the needle of transformation in Africa. We need everyone to be focusing on what's important and what works. We can only do this if we are talking to each other through a common language, the language of impact. It's time to be conscious, courageous, and connected. Welcome to the Greenlight movement.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to share my my screen again with you, just to take you back to my presentation. Let's get that out of the way. Sorry, let's just close that one down. Bear with me for a second.
Laura, if I may, I'm going to jump in while you're busy there. You know, sitting, watching you present and listening and looking at where we're at now. Well done. It's been the most magnificent journey and you've held it so well. And just to see all of this clarity coming out, I hope the rest of the participants are feeling it, because I certainly am. It's been such a wonderful tool and such a wonderful journey, and you presented very well.
It's very sweet of you, Gary. Thank you. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Here we go. All righty. Taking it up. All right, there we go. So I now want to just talk to you a little bit about how is data analyzed and reported, because that's really important. It's one thing to go and collect all this data, but so what? Data is only as good as you being able to use it to inform you to do something better, to improve something. So when the data comes out of the system, it comes out in these large Excel spreadsheets, but it can also come up in really nice looking reports. But I just wanted to show you what a dump of the data would look like, where every row is a household that has actually been surveyed in a community, in a program, in a cohort. And immediately when it's dumped out, we can actually see, hang on a minute, for this particular cohort or group in a program, we can see, wow, they really are stuck with indicator number 4 here, which happens to be the savings indicator. And just by looking at the graphs, we can start to understand the flavor, the nature of the poverty within the programs and locations and countries. I want to give you a little example. So let's say we took 100 families to do the poverty survey in 2022, which was the baseline. And then 90 families completed the same survey 12 months later in 2023. We call that the second survey, because you want a baseline, you want a second survey so that you can compare what has happened at the beginning of a program when they came in with a mindset and a set of behaviors. Then they experience the program 9 to 12 months later. What changes have occurred in that mindset that then translate into behaviors? So you have to have long enough time for that mindset and behavior change to settle in and become permanent. 6 months is too soon. We've done our trials and tested it. 9 months to 12 months later is a great period to see if changes happened. And this is where you've got to be brave as an organization, because there may not be impact. There may be great impact. There may be some impact. Are you willing to look in the mirror and to understand what is your organization and the program and your efforts bringing to the table? So here we've got a typical, as I said, an example. And to assess the social impact of these families, we'll take those 90 households that did the second survey, find them in the baseline data, and put it together. We will then compare. Okay, let's take a look at the score. On average, right across the 90 households for this program, what was the average score? And we can see that the average score was that of these 90 households, 32 indicators were green, 14 were yellow, 4 were red. 1 year later, that 32 had translated to 41 greens, 7 yellows, and 2 reds, showing that they had movement, great movement, a movement of 11 points or 23% upwards in an upwards direction. That is really, really nice impact to see in the first year. Then what our information shows us when you download is you can take that big aggregated score and you can then break it into the various themes or the dimensions of the survey. You can say, now let's actually look, how did the baseline score against the second survey for each dimension, and take a look at the amount of change that happened and in which direction. And we can see here, for example, that income and employment had great change, really, really, really nice change over time. And then you can drill into each of the dimensions themselves and say, let's look at the graphs. So here you can see income and employment. You can see all these reds and yellows, but wow, 9 to 12 months later, look what happened. Look how these reds and yellows are coming down and the greens are starting to grow beautifully. This is so good for you as a program because it informs you to and validates your theory of change and shows you what's working, what's not working, and also tells you where people are stuck the most and also what's difficult to change. It's great for reporting back to boards, funders, support partners, and in fact, all your stakeholders. Then the kind of data that rolls out is, let's take a look at what are the most top challenging indicators for a particular group or a particular location or across the entire year. And we can actually see which ones they are. We're also interested in which were the top greens, because just as much as we're interested in where families are stuck or struggling, we also want to know where to celebrate, where they're doing really well over time, and to be able to celebrate that with them. And of course, then going right down to the granular level of detail, having a look at how things have changed between baseline and second surveys for every single indicator. So you can see we started with aggregated data and then breaking it down from that overview all the way down into its little components, feeding and informing how you can take this information into your programs. What we love to do is we like to look at data over time and say, hey, let's take a look at savings over time. So we might see in a particular organization that 83% of a particular set of or groups of cohorts in a program were really, really stuck with savings. But through this 2-year program, look how they are slowly getting rid of their debt. And then slowly, by the second year, they're finally starting to save a little bit. But they had to first start getting rid of that debt. And so we know that savings is an indicator that is slow to change over time. But when you look at knowledge and skills to generate an income over exactly the same time period, what started off with 69% of the families feeling pretty, well, struggling with this indicator, 1 year of support and development with a well-designed program can turn that particular graph to 95% green like that, telling us that knowledge and skills to generate an income is actually quite a quick indicator to change if you've got a great program in place and if you're hitting the right spots. Then not only do we download and have data that can inform an organization in terms of what they can change or what they need to look at, what's working, what's not working, what to add more of, but also we produce scorecards from our system, scorecards and action plans. So here's a typical scorecard for an individual that's representative of their family, done in 2020. It's a baseline. I know what the scorecard, the score is, and we can see for each one of these indicators what it is. And this can be printed out and handed to the family. They can also show us which one they want to prioritize for action in order to change this in the next year or so. And then over time, when they've got 2 or 3 surveys under their belts, if your program is working with 2 to 3 years longitudinally, it is just so awesome to see how these surveys change and for the better. So they're reaching for a different quality of life here. So they're going from 38 greens to 43 greens to 47 out of 50 greens over 3 surveys, which means that that's over 2 years. Helping them to see their own change and inspiring them to do more and then to celebrate what they're achieving. Now, everything I've shown you up to now, that's quite a lot of quantitative data. That's data in numbers and scores, and oh, you can play with it till your heart's content. That tells you how much is changing and what is changing. But what is so delicious for me and my team at the Greenlight office is the qualitative data, because the qualitative data tells us why things are changing. If you only have quantitative data, it's half the story. Your qualitative data gives us the other half. And every story that is so different, and the challenges and the struggles and the trauma and it needs to be celebrated, how people are breaking through and making things happen for themselves. And we want to start learning why. And the why things are breaking through or changing really different from one city to the next, from one culture to the next, from one location in Africa to the next location. So that qualitative data combined with quantitative brings us those blended insights. that we then gather up as the Greenlight office and feed back into the Greenlight movement so we can all learn. And then one of the things that we're working on right now is, can we take this data and map it geographically? So that, imagine having a map of South Africa where you can click on an indicator and we can see what's happening at exactly in a particular point, a location on the map, and we can see what does that particular community need or what they're struggling with versus what do they already have. So if you're going to bring a program in, bring it to where they really need assistance, helping them to help themselves where they're really stuck or struggling. Don't bring a program in where they're telling you they're doing well. It's not going to fly. They might come in for the stipends. In the meantime, they're actually doing okay already. And I just wanted to give you a quick example of what a real live project looked like. This is Pelican Habitat for Humanity. Walked into a suburb called Pelican Park, worked with 100 households with a 9-month program. They were very red and yellow, and over a period of just 9 months, they managed to take these 100 households to a completely different level. Now, I would have loved them to have stuck around for the 3rd survey to see if that change had been sustained. We often forget to do that. Go and find our graduates, go and find the people that we've worked with who've exited out our programs, to go and find out, are they still maintaining those mindsets and behaviors? All right, onto an overview of the actual survey itself. I'm only going to talk about the poverty survey because that's what was requested. So right now in South Africa, we have the poverty survey, which has 50 indicators and it's available in 10 languages. We're currently also in Namibia, where the survey has 53 indicators, but it's only in one language, Silozi. Then we're in Uganda, where there are 54 indicators, and it's in 3 languages. And we're about to start working in Rwanda with 50 indicators, and in Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe with 51 indicators. Talking to in organizations in Kenya, as well as in Morocco. And just wanted to give you a snapshot of the kind of indicators that we actually have. Everything from information around income and employment, to separate sleeping spaces in a household, to cultural traditions and heritage, and then all the way through to a very important dimension called self-awareness and motivation. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. I'm not going to run this video right now. I want to carry on a little bit. If we've got time, I'll come back and run this video. I've got a lovely little 3-minute video that will show you how important those facilitators are. What I do want to say at this point is that the facilitators make or break the process. They are the magic in the Greenlight process. We look for people who've got very specific backgrounds and very specific attributes, like being able to hold space, being mature enough, having that emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. They are not rescuers, and they are definitely non-judgmental. So we look for a slightly older person, and preferably we train your people up, your facilitators with the right background to go on out and do the Greenlight surveys. If you don't have access to the right side of person, then we have lists of trained, independent, experienced facilitators who will come in and do that work for you. They will charge you a fee, and that relationship is between you and them. Taking you onto the Greenlight app and platform. We love our new technology. We spent COVID designing and getting it done. So we were like busy bees over COVID, not wasting time and saying, okay, we're leaving. We inherited technology from Paraguay, no longer works for us. We're going to create our own. And so we developed the new Greenlight app and platform, and we're really proud of it. And what it does is it allows you to go in as a Greenlight facilitator, to register a new family on the system, to conduct a survey. Every survey has a geolocation reference, so it puts a little tag onto the survey so that we can map it in the future. And it allows you to choose which survey you want to do with that family. It obviously has an element of consent. You can capture a photo of a consent form. You can capture a voice note of somebody saying, I consent to do the survey. You can choose which timeline you're doing, a baseline, a 12-month, a follow-up. Then you start the actual survey itself, where they are going to choose red, yellow, green. As it resonates, you can take some photographs of the dwelling, of the people with their consent, and then up pops the results once the survey is finished. And you can have a rich conversation with people about, are they surprised to see what they saw? What do they think about the reds? What do they think about the greens? What would they like to change first? And they can start prioritizing for action. Why don't you have it? What will you do to get it? How many months do you think it might take to get you to that point? And then when you want to go back in 12 months' time and do a second survey, you don't have to enter names and ID numbers again. You simply go onto the system and you find them on the system. You say, this is the client that I'm doing a second or a third survey with. You pull it down onto your tablet. And then when you go into the field, you go offline and you can do that survey. So you do not need to remain connected. You do not need connectivity to do the survey. You only need connectivity when you're uploading the survey into the system, or to find that person for a second survey to download their profile. Once that survey is uploaded, you can immediately see your results on the Greenlight platform. The Greenlight platform is open to all organizations. Every organization that's part of the Greenlight movement has a page that looks like this, where they can manage the categories, their facilitators, their various clients and beneficiaries, and they can do full-on reporting and analytics. This is an example of an organization that works with elderly here in Cape Town called NOAA. And you can see from their dashboard here that they have a total of 483 surveys they've conducted. And 203 are baseline, 58 are second surveys, and 42 are third. Altogether, they've got 205 beneficiaries or clients they're working with. Under analytics, they can start slicing and dicing the data to their heart's content. Next year in 2024, we're going to bring in BI, business intelligence, and in 2026, we want to bring in AI so that the slicing and dicing becomes even more granular and even more refined, so you can really get the maximum out of what you're looking for in terms of information. The collaboration of Greenlight members as a part of the Greenlight movement is something that we're really proud of. We're not just an organization at the Greenlight office who provides a service and a license. We don't work like that. We're not interested in having licenses. Our main aim is to get as many organizations looking at themselves in the mirror and asking the question, are we having social impact? And how can we optimize what we're doing? So we're all about understanding how organizations are changing their journey. Yes, we know the tool works on the ground. We don't have any doubt about that. We've seen people activated. We've read their stories. We know that happens. We at the Greenlight office are interested in what's happening with our Greenlight movement members, those organizations who are working with the beneficiaries on the ground. So we've been running now for 8 years. We've got about 145 organizations working with us. About 85% of those are social enterprises and nonprofits. The rest are businesses and corporates who are working with their employees. And I know in the video it said that we had about 40,000 surveys in the system. Well, we're just finishing off migrating from the old system to the new system, and we've got more than 70,000 surveys in the system. We really are, there's an ecosystem planned around what we do, and everything we do is incredibly intentional. At the very heart of everything is always the beneficiaries, the clients, and the employees that is being serviced by the Greenlight movement members. And we are enabling the Greenlight movement members to measure the social impact of the people on their programs. And the people who will go out and do that in the field are the Greenlight facilitators. And then we've got the ecosystem around us that will enable this three-legged stool in the center. that Greenlight community, that Greenlight movement, we have such a lot of fun with. We do webinars, we do forum sessions in the various provinces, and we try and run a conference once every 2 years, although the demand for once a year now is coming through. But the beauty of being so completely engaged with everybody who uses the metric is that we're establishing a community of practice. We're opening up and learning to be honest with each other, to see each other as collaborators and not competitors, to start sharing with each other what's working and what's not. And I found that from one conference to another, this organization is talking to that organization. They're putting an application in together. They're sharing training material. They're coming in to support each other. We've even got nonprofits that are walking into the corporate space and helping with their employees or the families of their employees, because the families are struggling. It also helps us to all measure against a common framework. So we have this common language of social impact. And by bringing all this data into a neutral space, which is the Greenlight office, we can aggregate it, and then we can use it to challenge up to the authorities of government and municipalities and powers be about how they're spending their money and what they're prioritizing as areas for focus. And ultimately, we know that every organization is not going to be able to help every family with all 50 indicators. If they can choose just 3 to 5, maybe 10 if they're lucky, indicators to help them work on, that's great. But there may be some indicators that are red where that organization doesn't have the competency or the strength to work on that indicator. We want them to refer out. And through the conferences and the forums, they get to know each other. They know who's got strengths where. And so we encourage these referral pathways that ultimately then inform stakeholders where are the priority areas for engagement. And we evolve our metrics over time. We refine them. We get them to work even better and better, the indicators. Do we need to add another one here? Do we need to take that one away? Is there no longer people are finding it valid? We come together as a movement and we decide how to evolve the metrics and tools, because it's not the Greenlight office's tools. Yes, we host it, but it's the movement who give input of how useful or valuable it is that guide us in the direction that they want us to take it. And as I said, what's very, very powerful are these referral pathways between each other. That's just a shot of our Greenlight conference in May 2023. There's Gary. You can see Gary smiling there. We really had a lot of fun. If you will bear with me for another couple of minutes, I'd like to take you through some insights. The kind of information that aggregates up through all the surveys and us getting to unpack the data with organizations and to see what's happening, to understand the big challenges, is that we really get to be able to document it and feed it back into the Greenlight movement. So right now, we know the main challenges to families across South Africa. We can name them. And we also get delicious insights from the voices on the ground. For example, we know that 84% of all participants who've completed both the baseline and 12-month surveys have improved their scores over time. We also know that the most effective programs appear to contain 3 elements: economic development, personal development, and healing. And of those 3, the most important element there is healing. In South Africa, if you have a program that does not contain an element of healing, you better get one in. We find that you cannot put skills on top of people who are bleeding inside. It just doesn't work. Another big insight: those who turn their indicators green for that last dimension, self-awareness and motivation, if they turn those indicators green first, they will turn the other indicators green the fastest. And that's kind of common sense. But until our London researcher said to us, hey, Greenlight team, did you know this is what the data is saying? Statistically, with complete significance, those that are turning that last dimension green first are turning all the others the fastest. So take care of what's happening in the head and the heart, and then you can bring on skills development, enterprise development, whatever other kind of external support you're bringing to the table. Work on the head and the heart first, and your scores should change very quickly. And I know Tracy is going to have something to say about that. We don't have too much more time, but you know, we've learned some incredible things, such as some families are just too stuck to respond at that particular time that you're there with them. It's another time and another place. And we've got to be brave enough to let those families go until such a time that they are able to contemplate and reflect on their situation. We also know that context is king. And it's very important to send in credible messengers, which means Greenlight facilitators that people can actually relate to. Don't send in a white woman, age 55 like myself, to a young Black family and talk to them about sexual health. It's not going to take. It's just not going to take. We also know that many households under-disclose certain indicators because they fear being judged. It's something that they may feel ashamed about. It's just not spoken about. And so the facilitators have to use a lot of EQ to just dig gently but firmly to get them to honestly open up and answer about some of those indicators. Yeah, I think maybe I also want to say that at this point down here, huge amounts of trauma, toxic relationships, and family dysfunctions is coming through in a lot of surveys in South Africa. And changing those elements in families' lives often can change in a lot of other indicators turning green quickly. We have had a few businesses who attempted to use the metrics without a facilitator present in order to scale, because it takes time to do a survey. It can take 45 minutes to an hour to do a survey. They don't want to let the employees off work to do the survey, and doing it without a facilitator present is a disaster. Within the movement, sharing is a lovely opportunity to learn what's working on the ground and what's not. And this is encouraging organizations to evolve their design and to leapfrog to tried and tested activities through this shared learning. We're also seeing over time now that orgs are changing the way they design their programs and implement their M&E practices. So it's a big woohoo moment. They're using the data to inform them. And those organizations, such as Taking Care of Business, who are agile and can pivot quite quickly as the information informs them, they really are, their social impact data is through the roof. Absolutely delicious. And they become very important reference sites to other organizations who are struggling to hit those sweet spots. I'm not going to take you in the next couple of slides. I just wanted to show you that we really have key insights that are coming out about really important, critical conversations, like how do you empower entrepreneurs? How do you empower the youth? How do you empower in rural areas? And you need different strategies for each of those things, each of those areas, each of those categories. Ultimately, we're looking for validation of theory of change. And if we can see a graph like this coming through from an organization that is learning and letting the data inform them, we know that this is money in the bank. This is gold. When an organization can say, after their program, they say goodbye to their graduates, and then one year later, go back and find them again, get them to do the survey, and the results still look like this or better. That is money in the bank. Every funder will clutter to come. They will be there. Your stakeholders will celebrate you. Your board, your very own teams will celebrate, because then they know that what you're doing, there's a permanence to it. There's a resilience to it. And you're absolutely on the right track. I'm actually going to stop there, because I have spoken a lot And I know that there are going to be questions. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Laura. Daddy-side, do you want to coordinate this piece, the question and answer? I think Gary had his hand up. I'll leave it to you, Daddy-side.
Sounds good.
Daddy said, I didn't actually have my hand up, and I've already said to Laura how pleased and delighted I am. I hope everyone else enjoyed it as well. It's been really, it's been so exciting to watch the progress of the movement and the cross-pollination and sharing and insights and the growth of the movement. The actual annual conferences, or the biannual ones, are very exciting because everybody's so delighted to meet their fellow colleagues and people they've been working with and learn from each other. It's been, this for me is one of the most exciting things we support as a foundation anywhere in the world. And now that we're moving into Africa, you know, when Stephanie when you approached me to have a discussion, I thought this was so perfect for Ashoka Fellows to take on as well. And we are talking to Bridgespan and a number of other large networks as well. And so, you know, our goal is to find ways to drive change in Africa, to enable people from the inside out for themselves. And the Greenlight tool certainly does that. So thank you for the opportunity to present to all your fellows.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Laura. And I think if there are any questions in the chat, I lost connection for a little bit, so I don't have the old chats. So if there's anything I'm missing in the chats, you know, please just unmute your mic and ask. But I think I'm also mindful of time, and I think people would really love to hear how Tracy and Taking Care of Business are implementing it, you know, from a practical point of view. I know that Gold Youth, I'm not sure if they're on the Gold Youth are also using it, and it's led by Ashoka Fellows, Susanna Farr. I think their head of learning was going to join the call. So Tracy, if you can, I think it'll be great to hear from you, and also then we can hear from other experiences if any other people on the call are also using it. I think it will help other people really understand how this can make a difference in their work. But thank you, Laura and Gary. Over to you.
There just was someone with their hand up, Sena.
Oh,
if you want to just let them have a quick, they put their hand up a little while ago. Sorry, Tracy.
I don't see who it
Sena
is.
Aluka.
Oh, okay. Please unmute your mic.
Nyabonga. Bonjour. Good morning, everybody.
Bonjour,
My name
Sena.
is Sena, calling from Togo. Hey, happy to be here. I'm in Dubai for COP28, so very happy to spend time and join this very useful conversation. Thanks, Stephanie, for inviting us from Ashoka Sahel. I work with an organization called Young Volunteer for the Environment. We are in 28 countries and been around for 22 years. So very much into the existing metrics, algorithm, all those big programs that are there to help us monitor, you know, progress made by our partners and beneficiaries. So I have 2-3 questions. First one is, what makes the big difference between the Greenlight approach and the 1,000 existing methodologies that we have out there? I may have missed the very beginning, but if I want to convince my people to join, what do you think will be my best argument? Thank you. And second one is, I've quickly seen the PowerPoint, the slide around the indicators. Is there room for changes, critique? If I want to take it to West Africa, to different ecosystem, people living in the desert, people living in the rivers, people living in the coastline that probably are going to be swallowed by the sea the next year. Those climate impacted communities, is there room for, you know, agility or flexibility or improvement of the indicators? I think those are my 2 first comments for now. And last one, if I understand, the approach is basically to monitor progress made by people themselves, or is it when we, as you know, startup or NGOs, we come with a program, with a project funded by somewhere else, and then in that process we want to assess the progress made by community? Is this something that is made by people themselves, or is it when we have projects? Because I've seen several people made, progress made by communities and assess. I probably know about the CLTS in the sanitation sector. We talk about community-led total sanitation, and in my place, it completely failed. So I'm very interested to hear about that as well. I don't know if my French English was interesting for you to understand, but merci beaucoup again. Thank you, and congratulations for this great approach. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Senna. I think that we understood you perfectly. You are better than us. We hardly speak French. So thank you for your participation and for those questions. Laura and Tracy, I don't know how.
So I'll just start adding just one or two things in answer to Senna, and I think then we really do need to hear from Tracy. So just, you did miss the first part of the presentation. What makes it pretty unique is that it works with both qualitative and quantitative data. It involves people in the measurement of their own lives. It's not a top-down approach. They are involved. They're asked to self-diagnose. It is the metric is then evolved further by the Greenlight movement, who has input to whether the tool needs to change, whether new indicators need to come in, go out, and to learn from the information. It's great, backed by great technology, as some of the others are, and the data is confidential, and there's no judgment with the data, and the data is delivered in such a way, the survey is delivered in such a way that people really resonate with it, with the pictures, with being allowed to or encouraged to choose which of those three elements or contexts most talks to them. So it takes a number of very important attributes and puts it all together in one package, whereas most of the other 150 impact assessment tools that I've looked at across the world has little bits here and there, but I haven't come across one that brings it all together in such a powerful but simple way, and it's easy to use. In terms of changes, yes, we're always open to doing new versions of the tool in other countries, but we need to have a chat about it because we like to measure apples with apples and pears with pears. So we'll look at a country context and we'll say, this is the survey for Rwanda. This is the survey for Burundi. The fact that we've got a community that might be living in a desert environment versus another community in the same country that lives on the other side of the country, let's say in a rainforest environment, may mean that we need two separate indicators, or it may not. It all depends. We do not want to discriminate. And this is going to be quite, I've had big academic conversations with various universities about this. We've got to be very careful of discriminating against communities just because of their location. Let me give you a brief example. If I have somebody who lives in a very rural environment in South Africa, do I put in the green a picture of that blue cubicle where they can go to the toilet? Or do I put a picture of a flush toilet, which is used in the peri-urban and urban environment? And the answer is no. You cannot discriminate against the person in the rural environment and say, no, it's good enough for you in the green to have a blue cubicle, but the urban people, no, for them it's going to be a flush toilet in the green. It's a standard of independence and dignity across the country for all human beings. What is the standard in South Africa? What do people aspire to? What do they perceive as what will make them feel not poor? And right across the board, it's having a flush toilet is what makes them feel not poor. Now, for me, digging in a hole is good. I'm all into sustainability. I'd rather have a hole than a flush toilet, but that's me and I'm one person. It's not the aspiration of the nation, which is to have a flush toilet. So we've got to be very careful about discriminating against certain communities based on where they are and how deep their poverty is, which then wants us to go and create separate tools for them. but we are very up for creating tools that focus on something different. So, for example, I've been asked in South Africa, would I consider putting a tool together that looks at the climate resilience and adaptation capacity of communities who are vulnerable. That's a whole other survey. And I'm going to stop for now because I want Tracy to give some input, please.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces on the call. I know my name says Grow ECD. That's just a small part of what we do. Our social enterprise is called Taking Care of Business, or TCB. And just a little bit of background for those of you who don't know me is our mission is to really help unemployed South Africans eradicate poverty using small business as the tool. And so we have a number of programs that help South Africans start businesses, and then we want to measure that that business resulted in poverty eradication in the family. And, you know, we discovered this tool. We thought we were doing really well. We were measuring tons and tons of KPIs, thought we were doing extremely well. We measure how much money people earn from their businesses in our work. And that was essentially our measure of success. And the story goes that I passed a very successful businesswoman. She'd finished our program. She was graduating, and I said to her, you know, stop. It's an amazing day. Tell me about how things are with you, you know, right now. And actually just tell me how much money you've got in your bank account. Like, I want to know, like, did this change your life? And basically she said, I've got nothing in my bank account right now. And she had earned, I had exactly the right amount, I had all the data. She'd earned a lot of money. And really what that proved to me is we hadn't changed the poverty mindset. She was still working in a short-term mind frame. And the poverty mindset is so much more than money. It's a very deep, complex, often intergenerational. And what I love about the Greenlight tool is that it actually, to some degree, gets to the interconnectedness of things that happen in families, in communities that cause the stuckness of poverty. And so, number one, a family gets to see that and saying, wow, I didn't realize that our choices here are having an impact on our financial well-being, which is what everybody uses to measure poverty. So I always give an example of two questions that really hit me when I saw the tool. One is it doesn't ask you how many bedrooms you have in your house and whether it's a brick structure or wooden structure or whatever, which most surveys do. It asks you, are there separate bedrooms for adults and children? Now, for me, every time I say that question, it resonates because we have a massive, you know, gender-based violence. You know, so many children are abused at a young age, and that's because children are seeing things, adult things that they shouldn't see when they're really little. And that can make a massive difference on somebody's life and their future. Another question is, does the family do something for leisure together? And I never know what the time frame is, Laura. Is it one every month or every week? And when we were surveying initially, that indicator was red. And I thought, well, surely that's just a normal thing that families do. But, you know, what we find when we analyze that is those families that are stuck in poverty literally kind of spend their lives doing chores and never, ever get out of the situation they're in. It's almost like they don't give themselves permission to have fun. They're in survival mode. And if you don't see a world out there, you can't have a hope for a better life. And so we live in Cape Town. Many of our women live in informal settlements, and we set them a challenge to take their kids to the beach on the weekend. It's free. All you had to do is find a way to get there, and the beach is fairly close to where they live. And on Monday morning, when they came and debriefed on that, you could see a change in their perspective already. So for me, it opens up a dialogue And the second, so for me, that's the primary impact, is that we start to understand as a family the poverty and how complex it is. The secondary impact is that an organization gets to measure its impact. You should not take on this tool for that to be your primary impact. This is a tool for the people. And the dialogue that those facilitators have around the couch or the kitchen table is powerful, incredibly powerful. Sorry, my doorbell's just rung. Just hold on a sec. Jess, can you get the doorbell? And already a shift starts to happen. And I think Laura spoke about the power of the green light, which is why we actually changed the name, because the other thing that happens in some communities, which, they don't look great, but actually when they answer the questions, they're more green than they are red and orange. Sorry, I'm going to have to answer that. They're more green than they're orange, and they go, wow, this isn't all bad. Look at the positive of that. And actually, it's broken down into bite-sized chunks to say, we can do something about this. And what are we going to do? And the family starts to talk about that and say, well, and that's where the action plan comes in. So we actually see movement. If you actually did nothing, I believe you'd already get movement by just having that conversation. And Senna, talking to your point around, is this a tool for the family, or if this is a tool for the organization? Of course, what we want to see is change. We want to see families eradicate poverty. And so ideally, it's in conjunction with an organization, because hopefully you as your organization are bringing opportunities to families who will then be able to reach for those opportunities with a clear vision as to why. And put that opportunity in their action plan. And so they've linked the opportunity to the goal of poverty eradication. And I think we assume that happens, but actually in many cases it doesn't happen. People go to programs and, not always sure why they're there. And therefore aren't necessarily working on the same things that you're working on. We also saw, the secondary objective being able to measure our impact. Getting that single view of a family was very powerful for us. And often our same facilitator goes back 2 years later to that family. And, the beauty is that she comes back, she says, this family is unrecognizable. Everything about this family has changed. And just being able to witness that, I think, is incredibly powerful, and to capture that in a qualitative way. Just how they dialogue. The discussion was different. The quality of the discussion was different in the second, let alone the physical, home, etc. But the power that we've been able to do is, we had all these different KPIs that we were using. And we can actually find a home for all of our KPIs within the actual tool. And so you can have a single M&E tool. And in many cases, we have convinced our funders to actually use this tool. And where we've been part of big programs, they've actually rolled out this tool to the other organizations that they work with. Because it's so visual. And has this sort of richness to it. So it's very well received in our experience by funders, and it actually has simplified everything for us. And yes, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. In other words, it's a self-assessment tool, but because it's done with a facilitator, you are validating it to some degree. You're with me. So this home visit is important. Our facilitators become very well skilled, where the family one of the questions is, does the family have a budget which they use regularly to manage their finances? And the family will go, yes. No, definitely we have a budget. Okay, and then the facilitator will say, well, can you talk me through, or can you show me your budget? And by the end of that conversation. Yeah, well, we've actually thought about putting a budget together, but we haven't really. And yeah, that's a good idea. So you are validating the data more so than you know, probably in other ways, because you've got that skilled facilitator to use, you know, inquiry type questions. So yeah.
Trace, maybe if you could just define a little bit more how your understanding grew about the head, heart, and hands, because I think that's been one of the most powerful things that people have learned from TCB in the Greenlight movement, around the need to work with head and heart. Hands is very important, but the head and heart being so critical, and how you have actually changed and adopted various modules into your program, and as a result, what's happened.
Yeah, so just to explain our methodology, we always say heart, that it has to be in this order: heart, head, and hands. Number one is people have to want change. They have to, you know, we use a term called CBTY. They have to believe, you know, they have to conceive it, then they have to believe it. And if that's not there, you know, you're gonna push against it. But sometimes before that happens, or many times before that happens, you have to create an awareness and openness in your programs as to why there's such resistance to change. And that's often trauma related, you know, the life that, you know, has got you to this part, and you've actually, you know, shut down. You're no longer hopeful. You're so angry with the world that you don't believe that anything else is possible. And so that work to sort of open up the heart, open up the hopefulness, and then go into conceiving and believing, and is very, very important for program success. Then the second thing is the head, is to design programs. You have to believe that you have the right knowledge and skills to be successful at the thing that you're attempting to do. And so many programs, you know, are far too theoretical, pitched at a wrong level, and that's the work we do with Vivian, who's also an Ashoka Fellow in the A to B movement, making sure that the cerebral skills that you're training people are appropriately designed and experiential. And then for us, particularly in the world of business, the hands element is you only learn through doing. Okay, that's how you grow neural pathways. All of what, in order to eradicate a poverty mindset, you have to grow new neural pathways. Okay, and the only way you grow new neural pathways is through having new positive experiences. And then you start to believe. So that becomes the conceive, believe, talk, walk, action. And all of a sudden, if you're doing all of those things, heart, head, and hands, suddenly you have eradicated the poverty mindset. Not suddenly, it's a process. And it's, yeah, so it has to be an experiential journey, and the Greenlight tool is part of that experience.
So just from what Tracy's saying, you can hear that everything is very intentional. It's very intentional. Yeah, and you have to be brave. You have to be brave to use the tools and the metrics, because the data is not going to lie to you. The data is going to come out, and it is what it is, and you've got to be willing to face what the data is going to say. And we've had organizations who haven't achieved impact, and they're like, oh, there's something wrong with the tool. Well, let's just chat about this. Let's talk about your program, and let's see why the data has come out the way it has. And then when you start digging, you find that the data, that the program is actually very, very superficial. And actually what they may be achieving is great outcomes, but it's not a program designed for impact. And those are two very different things: outcomes and impact, long-term impact. So it's been, yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. We've had some organizations have left us, a few because they didn't like what they were looking at and seeing in the mirror, but we've had 5 times more stay with us and say, oh, this is a learning journey, this is amazing. They get stronger and stronger at what they're doing.
Thank you, ladies. I'm mindful we're coming up to time. So if there's any last burning questions before we close, but I think Laura has generously shared her email address in the chat. So please take note of that. We'll also share some additional resources after this. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to the Ashoka team, and we can also put you in touch with Laura and Tracy or others who are doing this in other places. So if there's no other questions, I don't see any hands, or Tracy has also shared her details there. Please note of them in the chat. So thank you so much to Gary for bringing this to our attention initially, and for Laura and Tracy for coming to really share this approach with, the Ashoka Fellows. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of resonance with, a lot of Ashoka Fellows are looking at systemic impact. And I think this might be interesting to really understand the impact that they're having. So thank you so much for everybody. I know a lot of fellows also seconded their staff to join. So thank you everybody who has joined this conversation as well. Please send your questions or any of your feedback to us. We'd love to hear from you. And like I said, we'll share some resources and links to the Greenlight Approach's website. And also, if you would love to get in touch with Tracy or Laura, please let us know. So thank you so much, team. Thank you, all the Ashoka Fellowship team, for sharing this across, and making it a Pan-African event. Thank you, everybody. And over to you, Ife, if you want to have the last word.
I think you already said it, Daddy, but thank you so much to everyone that showed up, Laura, Tracy, all the fellowship reps, and all the fellows. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And then you'll be hearing again soon from us as to when next, we'll have a masterclass. It's most likely going to be in January, but we'll keep in touch to let you know. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And enjoy the rest of your week.
Yes, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Laura, Tracy.
Thanks, everyone.
Gary.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.